Hi, this is Kevin for pixelvert.com. In this video, what I want to do is to show you how to achieve extreme texture blending in an image, just as we've got in this particular image. If I zoom in to 100%, you can see here we've got a wood texture perfectly integrated into a face. The face has got some of the original texture showing through. We've got the eyelashes there. We've also got the skin texture showing through around there, and the wood texture is perfectly visible. And in terms of the color, we've got a curious mixture. We've got the contours of the original face showing through. We've also got the texture of the wood showing through perfectly, but the colors are sort of integrated so that in some areas you've got the same colors in the wood as you've got in the contours of the face. And I'm going to show you how I achieved all of this, and I'm going to try and do that as quickly as possible. So it's going to be a fairly advanced tutorial, but I think even beginners should be pleased with the outcome, because I think you'll be able to learn exactly how to achieve this kind of effect with your own images. I'm going to bring up the layers and just very quickly run through exactly what I've done. We've got eyes at the top. I've masked the eyes in at the top. I've used layer effects. If I zoom in to the image here, you can see that the eyes have been integrated into the image using some layer effects that I've put on the eyes layer. And here we've got inner shadow, bevel, emboss, and stroke. The stroke is giving us the dark color. The bevel and emboss is giving us this kind of chiseled texture. Let me bring that back up again. It's almost as though someone has chiseled into the wood. And we've got an inner shadow there, which just gives a bit of depth to the eyes to make it look as though they are encased behind this wooden mask. So before I continue with all this creepy detail, let me just very quickly run through the other things in the image. We've got the face of the model and the texture one after the other, kind of interposed one after the other to create the net effect. And what I'm going to try to do is to recreate this from scratch. I'm not going to go for the complete absolute 100% correct copy. I'm just going to go through to show you the techniques that I used. So I'm not entirely sure exactly what the final image is supposed to be. I think this model, this woman, this is a Mediterranean princess, I think, from olden times. You can tell that by the jewelry she's wearing. And I think she went into the woods, was a bit naughty in the woods, and she was punished by the old man of the woods, or demon of the woods, whoever hands out punishment in the woods. And he created this sort of mask for her. He turned her into wood, basically. He did something horrible to her. That's basically the story behind the tutorial. And what I've done is imported two images into the document. I've placed them as smart objects, and in order to create a smart object, all you do is just take, I'm just going to rasterize this layer, go to filter, convert for smart filters, say yes, and that converts your layers into smart objects. The reason that we want to do that is because it confers certain advantages once we get to the end of the project. If you saw right at the beginning, what I had was not just this particular image. There were a series of images with different textures, and when you've got a smart object, as long as all the smart objects are linked, all you need to do is to right click around there and choose replace contents. And when you've done that, you can actually replace the texture with another texture, and all the layers that are created from that smart object will update simultaneously. So let's get started by creating the multiple layers that we're going to need. For the model, I need 5 layers, and I'm going to create those by hitting Ctrl J or Command J on the keyboard 5 times. And the texture needs 2 extra layers, so I'm just going to hit Command J or Ctrl J 2 times. Now the top wood layer I'm going to call multiply, and the lower one I'm going to call screen. So these are the modes that we are eventually going to use, and I'm going to turn both of them off. The model layers, we'll name them as we go along. The first one I'm going to drag up in between the top layer, actually let me switch off the group, the model goes above the base layer, which is going to be this texture layer. So we'll rename that particular layer overlay, and the only thing we need to do on this one is change it to overlay mode and double click to bring up the layer styles. What we're going to do here is to work on the advanced blending, and what I need to do is to move the black slider for the top layer to around 58, and the white slider I'm going to alt click, split it in two, and drag it to 138 or thereabouts, and then I'm going to hit OK. Next, I'm going to go to the screen layer for the wood texture. I'm going to turn that on and turn the layer mode to screen, obviously. I'm going to double click, and on this layer the advanced blending is going to be entirely different. I'm going to leave the top layer alone. I'm going to go to the bottom layer. The blacks need to be split in two, so I'm going to press Alt or Option, and I'm going to drag the slider up to 161 approximately. I'm going to hit OK, and the next thing I want to do is to grab another of the model layers and bring it on top of that layer. Now this one is going to be called Multiply. Let me rename it Multiply, and we'll put it on multiply mode. And again, we need to go into the advanced blending options. So I'll double click, and all we're going to do is to alt click or option click on the white slider for the top layer and drag that down to 87 or thereabouts. There we are, and hit OK. And that layer can actually be duplicated. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on that layer, and I'm going to choose Copy Layer Styles. We're going to bring up another of the model layers and bring it on top of that layer, and we're going to right click and choose Paste Layer Styles. So we've now got the same advanced blending as well as the same option as well as the same blending mode. I'm going to change the blending mode actually to overlay, and next I'm going to double click on this layer, and we are going to put in an inner glow for that layer. The inner glow is actually going to be put on multiply mode, so we're going to darken the image using this inner glow, but it's actually going to be darkened using this very bright gradient which runs from orange through to yellow back to orange again. So it's being multiplied in a very specific way to create a kind of fairly bright result. The next thing I want to do is to change the size to 32, and that is it for the layer effects. I'm going to double click on that layer and I'm going to call it Inner Glow. And the next thing I want to do is to add a mask. I'm going to switch that layer off, and I'm going to hit Control Alt and 2 on the keyboard, or Command Option 2. That selects the highlights in the RGB composite. If you use 3, 4 or 5, that will select the highlights in the red, the green and the blue channels respectively. I'm going to add a mask to this layer here. I'm going to hit Control or Command I on the keyboard, and that inverts the mask, so it adds quite a lot of color to the image. If I alt click on the mask, you see that the mask is a combination of the face and the wood texture. So what we've done here is to create an effect which is going to be applied on the alpha channel of this particular layer, where the alpha channel itself is composed both of the texture and the face. So we're adding another layer of integration. So I'm going to move on now to the multiply layer of the wood. I'm going to switch that on, and I'm going to double click on that layer, and the whites on the bottom row alt clicked, so we drag them around 30. We're going to hit OK and change the blending mode to multiply. I'm going to grab another copy. I'm going to actually grab two of the model layers, and I'm going to drag them all the way up to the very top, and we'll switch off the top one. What I want to do is to put this one on soft light. What that does is that it adds a bit of the color and some of the luminance detail from the model's face back into the image. I'm going to escape out from the selection box there. I'm going to go to the top layer, and this layer is going to be used to introduce the eyes again. So I'm going to turn that on normal mode, and I'm just going to zoom into the eyes, and I'm going to make a selection using the pen tool. So I'm just going to draw around the eyes like that. I'm just going to tab away all the junk at the sides. I'm going to Alt Option click there to turn that into a corner, and we can draw another line. And again, I'll Alt Option click there, and we can complete the curve. Now at this stage, what I can do is to right click, and I can actually define a custom shape and call this right eye, and use that as a custom shape in future using the shape tool. Or what I can do is, for this particular image, is to right click and make selection. I'm going to feather it by 1.8, anti-alias ticked, new selection. I'm going to hit OK, and that allows me to create a mask using this selection here. And I'm just going to create a mask like that. Next, I'm going to shift click on the mask to disable it. I'm going to zoom in on the other eye, and I'm going to perform the same operation. And now, making sure that the mask is activated, I'm going to control backspace. That works. That's the shortcut on Windows to fill with white when white is the background. So what we've now got is a mask allowing us to see the eyes in their original glory. And I'm just going to Control D or Command D to get rid of the selection. Now bringing back the layers, we can see now we've more or less got the finished image. All I need to do is to add a few layer styles to this particular layer here, and what I'm going to do is to actually use a layer style that I created earlier, and it's this one here. And what this layer style does, it adds an inner shadow, and the inner shadow is using a color that I've selected from the image. It's a very dark red color. The distance and the size are intended for this particular image, 19 and 13. You'll use different settings for your image. I've put in an angle of 41 degrees, which allows the light to come in from this sort of angle, and as an inner shadow, it casts a shadow there, so that we've got a shadow where we expect the orbit of the eyes to be casting a shadow over the eye itself. So the bevel and emboss adds quite a lot of detail. The screen color is selected from the image, and the multiply color again is selected from the image. I've chosen a gloss contour of half round. As far as the light settings are concerned, I just basically experimented to see what worked. And here the size and soften settings are extremely important. The size option allows us to bleed the texture that I created into the face, and I found about 60-70 pixels was the ideal there. The soften had to be set around 5. Anything more or less than that really didn't work. I've put the style on outer bevel. Stroke emboss actually works fairly well because we've got a very large stroke, and I'm now going to show you the stroke. The stroke is a very large one of 28. Again, a color that I've taken from inside the image, and I've chosen the overlay blending mode to give it a very subtle effect and put it on outside. The opacity of 55% again makes it a lot more subtle. So what I'm going to do now is to go back to the original style, select that and hit OK. And what that does is it blends the eyes in perfectly with the rest of the image, and the image is basically complete. As you can see there, we've got a really kind of amazing integration between the wood and the eyes, and if we wanted to, we could very easily replace the wood texture by right-clicking on any of the wood layers. We need to right-click in this area here, choose Replace Contents, and what you would then do is that you'll get another image coming up replacing all the wood layers And in actual fact, I'll do that to demonstrate exactly what needs to be done. All texture layers have been updated. Now, the one thing that needs to be updated is the mask. The mask still shows the wood texture. So what I'm going to do is to actually zoom out. I'm going to go to one of the texture layers. I'm going to control click on all the other texture layers so that they're all selected. Then I'm going to control T to transform. Then I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to resize as well. Now if I zoom in, you'll see that the texture detail has been changed, and all we need to do now is to alter the mask. So I'm going to switch off this layer, and this layer. I'm going to go right to the top and switch off the top layer as well. And what we've got now is the texture as it applies just to everything below the inner glow layer. Now what I could do, and what I am going to do, is to change the overlay layer to multiply. So I think that produces a slightly different and more desirable effect. And I'm going to go to this layer here. I'm going to hit Control Alt and 2 or Command Option and 2 to select the highlights in the image. And I'm going to delete the layer mask, create a new layer mask, and again invert the layer mask by hitting Control or Command I on the keyboard whilst the layer mask is activated. Then I'm going to switch everything else on. And you can see just how easy it is to change the texture in the image and to get a pretty decent result. So this is the new texture. As you can see, we've got that perfect integration happening again. And it really is a very simple and effective way of creating a number of beautiful and very different images where the facial contours are always coming through and the texture details are just perfectly integrated into the image. So I hope you found that useful. If you did find that useful, please leave a comment, subscribe, rate the video on YouTube. And thank you for watching. Hope to have another exciting video coming through soon. I hope these images don't give you nightmares. Thanks again. Bye.